Joe Manchin expected to skip Biden event as he weighs leaving Democrats. The West Virginia Democratic Senator Joe Manchin is expected to skip a prominent White House celebration of one of Joe Biden's signature legislative achievements, 24newsread.blogspot.com reported, as he considers leaving his party, and perhaps running for president himself. Next week, the Biden administration will celebrate the first anniversary of the Inflation Reduction Act, IRA, a healthcare, climate, and tax reform package Joe Biden hailed on signing as the biggest step forward on climate ever. With this law, the American people won and the special interests lost, Biden said. Manchin, 75, helped write and name the law and attended the signing ceremony. But Biden's actions on climate are one issue now pushing the fossil fuels-aligned senator towards the exit door, and he will reportedly skip the anniversary event. On Friday, 24newsread.blogspot.com said the White House was trying to keep Manchin engaged. The senator recently dined with a top Biden aide, 24newsread.blogspot.com said, as the White House tried to ensure the president is not caught off guard when Manchin publicly breaks with him. Manchin helped us find a way to thread the needle and get things done on the IRA, a White House source was quoted as saying. Earlier this week, Manchin issued a statement marking the IRA anniversary. Hailing one of the most historic pieces of legislation passed in decades, he said West Virginia, a state dominated by coal interests, was already seeing real results. But he also said he would continue to fight the Biden administration's unrelenting efforts to manipulate the law to push their radical climate agenda at the expense of both our energy and fiscal security. On Thursday, Manchin told West Virginia Radio he was thinking seriously about ceasing to identify as a Democrat, whether to run for re-election as an independent or as a third-party candidate for president, backed by the No Labels group. Democrats hold the Senate 51-49, a majority that already includes 3 independents, Bernie Sanders of Vermont, Angus King of Maine and Kyrsten Sinema of Arizona. Sinema has joined Manchin in wielding great power over Biden's agenda. Manchin said a presidential run might depend on whether Biden and Donald Trump, both historically unpopular, are the Democratic and Republican nominees. If they are not, he said, that changes the game completely. The bottom line is, will the middle speak up? Does the middle have a voice? The White House official who spoke to 24newsread.blogspot.com said, "We will keep finding ways to work together."
Subscribe our YouTube channel and click our bell icon for new videos. Subscribe our YouTube channel and click our bell icon for new videos.
Canadian government probing allegations Poland wanted to surveil former Alberta cabinet minister. The federal government is looking into allegations the Polish government has dismissed one of its diplomats over their refusal to gather information on the social and political activities of former Alberta cabinet minister Thomas Lukaszuk, 24newsread.blogspot.com news has learned. This is a violation of international diplomatic protocols and agreements. This definitely infringes on my human rights or my charter rights, Lukaszuk told 24newsread.blogspot.com news in an interview. I would never expect that Polish diplomacy would be engaging in such activities. Any random ministry cannot simply surveil Polish Canadians abroad. Lukaszuk, who served as deputy premier in former progressive conservative Premier Alison Redford's government, believes he's a target for his activism against a controversial Polish pastor, Father Tadeusz Rydzyk, who has private radio and television stations in Poland. Rydzyk has been criticized for sermons with homophobic and anti-Semitic views, as well as preaching against abortion and the European Union. In 2020, Lukaszuk, a regular Alberta politics commentator on 24newsread.blogspot.com television and Jewish advocacy group B'nai B'rith, successfully pushed for the Edmonton Archdiocese to forbid Rydzyk from delivering sermons during a visit, and for a Toronto radio station to stop carrying programs from Rydzyk station, Radio Marija. Lukaszuk said for years he dismissed rumors that the Polish Foreign Affairs Department was soliciting information about him and directing individuals to also gather information about him. I actually never really paid much attention to it, because it seemed so far-fetched, he said. Until I received a proverbial, because it was electronic, but a proverbial brown envelope. Lukaszuk shared with 24newsread.blogspot.com news what he says is a series of encrypted email exchanges dated March 13, 2022, June 14, 2022, and April of this year between a division of Poland's Foreign Affairs Department tasked with liaising with Polish diaspora communities, and the country's Consul General in Vancouver, Andrzej Mankowski. This is a minister instructing his staff and consulates across Canada, asking them to gather deeper information about Thomas Lukaszuk's social and political activities, Lukaszuk said. It definitely sent chills down my spine that as a Polish Canadian who lives in Canada more than 40 years, that government is still dispatching its officials in Canada to gather information that isn't publicly available. 24newsread.blogspot.com news has not independently verified these are official communications, but Poland's Secretary of State Piotr Warzyk is seen addressing the emails before a Polish parliamentary committee at the end of July 2023 in a publicly available video. In it, opposition politicians ask Warzyk if Mankowski was dismissed because he did not want to spy on Lukaszuk. One politician read out loud, in Polish, an email to Mankowski. According to a translation it said, "I kindly request that you prepare and forward, via the appropriate channel, an in-depth note to the department concerning the socio-political actions of Mr. Thomas Lukaszuk and their possible impact and significance for the Polish community in Alberta." Warzyk answers it is adequate to recall a consul general that refuses to carry out an assignment. Mankowski would not speak about his departure. In an email he told 24newsread.blogspot.com news, "If you are preparing material about my dismissal, unfortunately I cannot comment on it." He is scheduled to vacate his post by the end of August. GAC says it's assessing next steps. Global Affairs said it is aware of the allegations and is taking the matter very seriously. In a statement, the department said it has been in contact with Lukaszuk and is also assessing next steps by working with its security intelligence and community partners. "This is not a good idea for any country to be doing through their diplomats," said Maria Popova, an associate professor in political science at McGill University. "It is the behind the scenes of really playing out domestic Polish political infighting and involving a Canadian citizen who's had an outspoken stance on it," she said. Popova added it is unusual for a democratic country to look into an individual's activities. "Authoritarian regimes of course do that quite often," she said. "But democracies are usually not that concerned about individual activities and also value more, of course, freedom of speech." Popova nevertheless said she would expect the Canadian government to tread lightly in criticizing Poland. She said the foreign interference in question appears to be more related to domestic Polish political issues than any matter regarding Canadian politics. "Chances are through back-channel communications that there will be a message sent," Popova said. A spokesperson for the government of Poland's Foreign Affairs Department referred to 4newsread.blogspot.com news to the United Nations Treaty governing international diplomatic relations. "All instructions and orders in relation to activities and reports by the embassy/consulates of the Republic of Poland are within the rights and privileges determined by the Vienna Convention," the spokesperson said. They would not confirm or deny the veracity of the emails.
Subscribe our YouTube channel and click our bell icon for new videos. Subscribe our YouTube channel and click our bell icon for new videos.
Teresa Villers had £70,000 in Shell shares while Environment Secretary. A former Environment Secretary has revealed she has shares worth more than £70,000 in Shell that she did not disclose as required for more than 5 years. Teresa Villers was the Secretary for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs from July 2019 until February 2020, but only this week disclosed she has had investments worth more than £70,000 each in Shell and the drinks company Diageo since February 2018. Villers also disclosed shares worth more than £70,000 in Experian, held since July 2019, and in an investment trust, RIT Capital Partners. Her disclosure follows revelations in the 24 News read.blogspot.com of the scores of MPs who held shares that were, in effect, secret. House of Commons rules require MPs to disclose all shareholdings in a single company that are worth more than £70,000. A spokesperson for Villers said she deeply regretted her failure to monitor the value of shareholdings and has offered her sincere apologies, adding that the shares were professionally managed and she did not take day-to-day investment decisions. The spokesperson added, "It did not occur to her that any single shareholding would reach the threshold for declaration, but a legacy received in 2018 caused that to happen. As soon as she realized this, she alerted the Registrar of Members' Interests and the Standards Commissioner. She takes full responsibility for the mistake. She accepts that it should never have happened, and that she should have kept track of the additions to her investment portfolio. She is taking steps to ensure that this never happens again. Nothing she has ever said or done as an MP has been influenced by these shareholdings." Villers' late declaration of her interests could place her in breach of the House of Commons Code of Conduct, and raises questions about the £70,000 threshold for registering interests. It also raises further questions about the procedures used to determine if ministers' interests should be publicly disclosed. Despite Villers' ministerial role, her interest in Shell was not disclosed in the list of ministers' interests, published by the Cabinet Office with the assistance of the Prime Minister's independent advisor on ministers' interests. During Villers' time in post, the European Commission contacted her to complain about Shell's plans, backed by the government, to leave parts of its decommissioned oil rigs in the North Sea. Villers' spokesperson said she had disclosed to DEFRA that she had a portfolio of shares upon her appointment and she offered to place the shares into a blind trust. The spokesperson said, "The Prime Minister's ethics advisor said that this step was unnecessary because the portfolio was managed for her and she did not take investment decisions. So ministerial code requirements were complied with. Nothing she did as DEFRA secretary was influenced by any of these shareholdings." Dr. Susan Hawley, the executive director of Spotlight on Corruption, said, "It's good to see parliamentarians getting more serious about disclosing shareholdings, in light of the Guardian's work on this. However, it is alarming that the independent advisor at the time did not think that shareholdings in companies which related directly to a ministerial remit were worth declaring. This should prompt a real rethink across the board about how important it is that MPs and ministers accurately report shareholdings in their declarations in order to prevent the potential for direct conflicts of interest. We also desperately need a proper debate about whether the threshold for shareholding declarations is currently set far too high. Parliamentarians' registration of their shareholdings faces further challenges, with plans being discussed in the House of Lords to double the threshold there for registration from £50,000 to £100,000.
Subscribe our YouTube channel and click our bell icon for new videos. Subscribe our YouTube channel and click our bell icon for new videos.
Commentary: PM Anwar rattles Malaysia's business elite with his wooing of Tesla. Kuala Lumpur, Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim scored a big win in his drive to attract foreign investment last month when he managed to convince billionaire Elon Musk to choose Malaysia as the regional headquarters for electric vehicle, EV, car maker Tesla. In doing so, Mr. Anwar also delivered a less than subtle message to Malaysia's entrenched business and political elite that their halcyon days are numbered. Tesla's move into Malaysia, which came on the back of strong competition from the Indonesian government, is nothing short of groundbreaking. Under the terms Mr. Musk negotiated with the Anwar government, Tesla would not be required to meet local equity rules that stipulate that the country's indigenous groups, which comprise the majority ethnic Malay community, must own a minimum 30% interest in foreign ventures establishing businesses in Malaysia. What is more, Tesla's sales of its imported cars currently manufactured in its Shanghai facility would not be subject to the country's opaque import licensing system called Approved Permit, AP, which covers the import of a range of items from rice to fireworks and vehicles. The local equity rules and the import licensing regime have been at the heart of the Malaysian economy for decades. Mr. Anwar's concessions to Tesla suggest that change is afoot, setting the stage for a confrontation between his government and a set of powerful politically well-connected business groups that have benefited hugely from this system. Economists have long maintained that the licensing regime and strict local equity rules make Malaysia unattractive as an investment destination. The system raises the cost of doing business locally that is ultimately passed down to ordinary citizens who have been forced to put up with sharp spikes in the cost of living. How the face-off will play out in the coming months is unclear, but it is set to bring the spotlight and stir debate on the serious distortions in the local economy that has spawned huge fortunes for politically privileged groups. Political privilege. Like most Southeast Asian countries, Malaysia has long practiced a licensing system for the import of staple food items to meet local demand and manage domestic prices. The licensing system was extended to imported cars in the mid-1970s to encourage the country's politically dominant, but economically weak ethnic Malays, to venture into the auto distributing business, which at the time was dominated by foreign trading companies and ethnic Chinese-owned businesses. When the Malaysian government created the national Proton car in the mid-1980s, the AP system was combined with tariffs to protect the new local automaker from foreign competition. Under the system, so-called licensees are granted APS, which every car manufactured or assembled outside the country must secure before it can be imported or sold locally. No open bidding is involved in the award of APS, which are issued by the Ministry of International Trade and Industry to ethnic Malay investors, and the recipients are automatically endorsed as qualified importers. Before long, the AP system was viewed as a political tool to enrich businessmen linked to the ruling United Malays National Organization, UMNO, with reports of some selling their import APS to other auto distributors for between RM10,000, $2,180 and RM50,000 per vehicle. The licensing system later went on to cover foreign-built trucks and motorcycles before covering other food items. While the government has removed some food items from the AP list to deal with the shortages of vegetables, such as the round cabbage, import permits are still required to bring these items into the country. Advisors to Mr. Anwar insist that a radical revamp of the AP system will help deal with the cost of living issues that is a top priority for the government. This comes as Malaysia grapples with intense competition from countries such as Indonesia, Thailand, and Vietnam to attract foreign capital from the region. There is little argument that the AP system represents a serious impediment to the economy. Previous UMNO-led governments had set deadlines in 2010 and then in 2014 to begin phasing out the import licensing system. But the pushback from the Association of Malay Vehicle Importers and Traders of Malaysia, or PECIMA as it is known in its Malay language acronym, forced the government to back down because the grouping forms a strong lobby in UMNO. Two PECIMA members, who spoke to 24newsread.blogspot.com on condition of anonymity, believed that the Tesla deal was a one-off gesture by the government and the AP system would not be easy to dismantle because of the employment opportunities provided by the association's more than 100 members and its role as a pillar of Malay entrepreneurship in the economy. But PECIMA's clout has weakened substantially with UMNO's diminished position in national politics. Moment of reckoning for auto sector. The UMNO-led National Front coalition was booted out of government in the 2018 general election, and the party is currently a junior member in Mr. Anwar's Pakatan Harapan Unity government, which is facing a crucial set of 6 state elections on Saturday, August 12. A poor performance by UMNO would only strengthen Mr. Anwar's hand to push ahead with tough reforms. In any case, logic dictates that a moment of reckoning is approaching for the auto sector, with other foreign EV makers expected to insist on the same terms Tesla secured. Malaysia has one of the most robust auto markets in the region with a record 720,658 vehicles sold in 2022, According to the Malaysia Automotive Association, up from 508,883 units in the previous year, or a spike of 41.6%. Even if the Anwar government allows the country's long-coddled auto sector to maintain the import licensing infrastructure, the outlook is not bright. As more AP-free imports flood the domestic market, the value of the licenses will fall with the expected lack of demand.
Subscribe our YouTube channel and click our bell icon for new videos. Subscribe our YouTube channel and click our bell icon for new videos.
Equatorial Guinea and Belarus agree to strengthen their relations on trade and political dialogue. Equatorial Guinea and Belarus have agreed to strengthen their relations on trade and political dialogue. The agreement was reached on Friday in Malabo by Equatorial Guinea's Minister of Foreign Affairs, International Cooperation, and Diaspora, Simeonoya Isano Ainge, and Belarus Minister of Foreign Affairs, Sergei Alenik. Sergei Alenik, who was on a two-day official visit to Equatorial Guinea between 02-03 June 2023, said that the agreement is very important to improve the two countries' diplomatic relations, which was established 31 years ago in 1992. Belarus and Equatorial Guinea established diplomatic relations in 1992. This visit and negotiations reaffirm our commitment to advancing our bilateral relations, Sergei Alenik said on Friday after meeting with Minister Ainge in Malabo, the capital of Equatorial Guinea. Additionally, Minister Ainge of Equatorial Guinea stated that in their latest agreement, the two countries are to take concrete steps to develop a political dialogue beyond their foreign ministries. Mr. Ainge added, "We also agreed to develop trade and economic ties in the fields of agriculture, education, culture, tourism, and industrial development." The two ministers emphasized that the agreement would operate based on mutual respect, mutual trust, and mutual interest.
Subscribe our YouTube channel and click our bell icon for new videos. Subscribe our YouTube channel and click our bell icon for new videos.
The week in politics, Labour's Auckland Harbour Tunnel Plan, national cell phone ban. An ambitious and vastly expensive tunnel proposal for Auckland Harbour, a $2 billion international fund for New Zealand's renewable energy projects. The latest poll shows NZ first with enough support to get back into Parliament, and the hottest topic of the week, National's policy to ban cell phones in schools. It was a simple announcement by National Party leader Christopher Luxon that created the most controversy this week. National will ban cell phone use at school to help lift achievement, he said in a statement. The ban applies to all schools. Schools will be able to decide exactly how they enforce it. After releasing the statement, Luxon told Morning Report the ban was one of the ways National would lift abysmal achievement levels. Official figures have shown 15% of school leavers in the past year did not have any NCEA qualifications. What we're hearing from parents and teachers and what we're seeing in the research is that phones are incredibly distracting and disturbing, and they are getting in the way of student achievement, he said. After that, it wasn't so simple. Principals say National's plan to ban phones in schools is unworkable, was one headline on 24newsread.blogspot.com's website. Secondary Principals Association President and Principal of Papatoetoe High School, Von Kolyalt, believed the ban wasn't necessary, and he didn't think having the government controlling it was the way to go. It will create conflict. It will create a legal requirement for us to confiscate rather than to educate and train students on how to use things appropriately, he said. Kolyalt thought the practicalities of taking phones off students en masse was just not worth thinking about. Luxon dismissed his concerns. This is not rocket science. If a school principal can't work out how to actually comply and enforce with the program, there'll be some other issue going on in that school. Luxon said the ban would be implemented with a simple regulation under the Education Act and monitored through the Education Review Office. Other media outlets sought a wide range of opinion. Education Minister Jan Tynety, a former school principal, also said the ban was unnecessary. She believed it showed national misunderstood how schools operated. Schools can ban cell phones if they believe this is appropriate, and I understand that many already do, she said. The Herald reported a number of schools, including Diocesan School for Girls, Otago Boys High School, Ashburton College, and Rotorua Intermediate already had cell phone bans in place. Diocesan School for Girls Principal Heather McRae said the ban had been in place since 2019 for all students up to the end of Year 10, and there had been a big improvement in the amount of physical activity and social skills. You know, they actually talk to their friends and do cartwheels on the lawn, and you see a whole kind of liberation, she said. The ban didn't extend to senior students because they were of an age to learn responsible behaviors and how to moderate their usage. Otago Boys High School Rector Richard Hall said cell phones had been banned since 2022 and it was one of the best things I've done. Hall said he had seen changes since the ban was implemented, and it was now normal to see boys interacting and playing together during breaks. Staff were also spending a lot less time dealing with cyberbullying. The Herald found several other schools which had implemented bans. One principal said parental support was not unanimous to start, but most were grateful for the policy because they were concerned about their child's screen time. Stuff did one of its yes/no website polls, and on Friday morning 22,852 readers had responded. The count was 68% in favor with 32% opposed. Luxon insisted the policy wasn't political or ideological, but National will be interested in the public reaction. It has very likely carried out its own private polling. The ban is easy for a government to put in place, so it will probably be one of the first things National does if it wins the election. Education wasn't on the government's agenda this week, it was transport and energy. Prime Minister Chris Hipkins began by announcing the government's chosen option for a second Auckland harbour crossing was 3 tunnels, 2 with 3 lanes for vehicles and 1 for light rail. The cost was a staggering $35 billion to $44.5 billion, with construction starting in 2029. These new tunnels future-proof the city's transport network by reducing reliance on the harbour bridge while creating fast new options for getting in and out of the city, Hipkins said. For decades we've heard about false starts, vested interests, political stalemates, a lack of vision and a lack of will. It's time to stop that talk, we need to move into action mode. It's a hugely ambitious project which will take decades to build, and ran into its first problem when Auckland Mayor Wayne Brown accused Labour and National, which said it was supportive of more vehicle lanes, of putting politics above transport, the Herald reported. Brown said the council was looking forward to working on some better, faster, and cheaper plans. Both major parties need to realize that their big transport plans won't happen unless they work in partnership with Auckland, and that's not what has happened here, he said. The Herald published an editorial pointing out some obvious difficulties. There are questions about cost effectiveness. It is very long-term, taking decades to complete. The entire project or parts of it could be kicked aside by a different government before it gets underway. The paper said Labour's plan appeared to be a major play for the biggest pool of voters, but it's a huge amount of money to spend on a project mainly benefiting North Shore residents. The Greens didn't support it, with co-leader James Shaw saying the tunnels weren't the best way to address congestion. Frankly, during the climate crisis it's a bit bonkers to be building more roads, he said. Herald columnist Simon Wilson may have captured the public mood in an article titled "Labour and Nats are Transport Fantasists." Both parties intend to spend many tens of billions of dollars on these plans, over several decades, he said. They are fantasists, the pair of them. We have urgent transport problems that need addressing now, they both promise the moon, much later. After making this announcement, Hipkins switched to renewable energy. At his post-cabinet press conference he announced 3 wind farm projects were being fast-tracked for consenting, part of 9 projects that were in the pipeline. Fast-tracking would cut about 18 months off the consenting process, and it had become a key part of the government's strategy to accelerate economic recovery post-COVID, he said. What is actually new in what you're announcing, he was asked. he replied that the projects were being speeded up. Hipkins had a lot to say about renewable energy and its environmental benefits. What he was doing, it became apparent later, was laying the groundwork for another big announcement, a first-of-its-kind $2 billion climate infrastructure fund. The fund is being launched by BlackRock, one of the world's biggest investment companies, and the aim was to make New Zealand the first country in the world to reach 100% renewable energy, 24newsread.blogspot.com reported. The head of BlackRock Australasia, Andrew Landman, said it was the first time it had done a country-specific initiative like this one. We've benefited over the last 10 years managing various retirement savings for New Zealand, and I think through that engagement we've learned so much about the innovation in New Zealand and the institutional investors here. They are our global leaders. Economist Bernard Hickey explained how the BlackRock investment works. You can listen to it on 24newsread.blogspot.com's website. The BlackRock deal was generally welcomed, and National didn't have a problem with international financing of projects. ACT leader David Seymour was the outlier. Working towards 100% renewable electricity was a dumb idea which would push power prices up for little environmental gain, he said. After last week naming a National/ACT post-election cabinet, the Herald's Audrey Young has had a crack at a Labour/Greens/TE Paddy Maori lineup. The Greens would want a full coalition agreement, so Labour's cabinet would have to shrink with some MPs moving down and some out altogether. Young thought it was almost certain that 5 or 6 existing ministers would announce their retirement during the next term, and that would give Hipkins the chance to add new ones. Her picks for retiring ministers were Grant Robertson, Kelvin Davis, Damien O'Connor, David Parker, and Nana Omahuda. So the renewal in any Labour/Greens cabinet would initially be provided by the Greens, and then by Labour partway through the term. 2 ministers, Michael Wood and Kiri Allen, have resigned and not been replaced, which helps make room for the Greens. They would have 3 ministers in cabinet: James Shaw with climate change, Marama Davidson with conservation, prevention of family and sexual violence and associate housing, homelessness, and Chloe Swarbrick holding mental health and associate local government, climate adaptation. Outside cabinet there would be Julie Ann Genter with associate transport and women, Tina Tuyano with oceans and fisheries and associate agriculture, and Galraz Garaman holding disability, associate justice, and associate immigration. Young said though Te Paddy Maori would stay out of a coalition, giving Labour support on confidence and supply only. She thought it highly unlikely they would want ministerial portfolios. The week ended with a Taxpayers Union Curia poll showing NZ First climbing to 5.8%, enough to return to Parliament with 7 seats. The poll continued the trend of National and ACT having sufficient support to form a government if an election was held now, but they would only just make it. It was bad news for Labour. The party dropped 4 points to 27.1%, slipping below 30% for the first time. National didn't gain much from Labour's fall, going up 1.6 points to reach 34.9%. Most of it went to the Greens, up 3.1 points to 12%, with the poll showing the party catching up to ACT, which was on 13%. Previous polls have shown NZ First slowly gathering support, but this was the first one to put it firmly over 5%. A Roy Morgan poll last week had it on 5%, and that was the first time NZ First had reached the threshold. The next set of polls released by TVNZ and Newsub will be important because they will show whether NZ First's gain and Labour's slump are a trend that's firming up.
Subscribe our YouTube channel and click our bell icon for new videos. Subscribe our YouTube channel and click our bell icon for new videos.